Focus firing, another age-old Total War tactic that works incredibly well in Total War Warhammer. But what is it, why is it effective, and where should we use it? Well, that's what we're going to look at. Let's go. Firstly, a demonstration of focus firing so we understand the concept. Here I've got 3 units of Jade Warrior Crossbowmen against 3 units of Jade Warrior Crossbowmen. A completely fair fight, right? So what is focus firing? Well, as the name suggests, it's focusing multiple missile units into one single target, so that you can nuke that target with a lot of damage very quickly and, in theory, get rid of them, either killing them off or at least routing them off. So that's what we're doing here. My units are focusing down a single unit at a time, while the enemy AI units are taking apart multiple of my units at the same time. So it's a question of, is it better to have 3 of your units shooting 3 enemy units, or should you put them all onto one target at a time and move on when the first one's done? Well, here we can see I've broken the first enemy unit. I'm going to move on to start working on the second one now. And the AI has done a fair bit of damage to one of my units, as they did focus fire it with 2 units. But it's okay, it's not routing yet. They've done a little damage to another one. But the way the AI generally chooses its targets is pretty much whatever's closest, it'll start shooting at. So 2 of those units must have been closer to that one unit at first. You can see we're wearing down this second unit though. The other one's coming back, but they're pretty beat up. They're not going to last too long. And inevitably, I'll be able to win this completely fair fight against the AI and beat them pretty badly. I haven't had any routing. I've taken some damage, of course, but I've beaten their 3 units with a simple, superior tactic. Now, the real reason why this is so powerful is not in necessarily the damage itself, but the ability to rout the enemy units and take away their damage potential to me. That's what allowed me to pull ahead in damage and outgun them. And this, much like many other tactics, all revolves around the leadership and the stacking of damage penalties. Watch here as the damage sustained penalty skyrockets from 16 to 41, nearly routing this unit off right away. It goes down to 12 leadership there. And the reason for this sudden skyrocket in the damage sustained penalties is because they took a lot of damage in a short space of time. You can see we're up to minus 66, and that was enough to rout these crossbowmen off. So when you're focus firing a unit, you're nuking them with damage so quickly that their leadership is going to struggle. So that's kind of half the purpose of focus firing. You want to try and break units, especially if you're having a missile shootout, because then you can render them useless while they're routing and running away. Which is how we just won that little 3v3 shootout. The other side of focus firing is simply doing the damage and weakening enemy strong units, and quickly, even if you won't be able to rout them off. So you have to think about the targets that you're going to choose. When you see an enemy army coming, who's the real danger there and who do you need to get rid of? What's the threat to your army? Well, let's say Bloodletters here. Are they the big threat? They're pretty dangerous, but they're by no means the most worrying thing in this army, so we're not going to focus fire them. Minotaurs. They're an incredibly dangerous and powerful unit. They're expensive, they're mobile. Those could be a good target. There's also the Soul Grinder, another very dangerous damage dealer, powerful unit that could give me a lot of problems and will do a lot of damage if I let it. But both of those pale in comparison to the biggest prize here, Skarbrand. Not only is he an incredibly dangerous bloodthirster, but he's also their Lord, which is an extra bonus. If we can focus fire down and get rid of a Lord, well, that's the best we can ask for. So Skarbrand charges in, and we will then turn to focus all of our 3 missile units here onto him, which means we can put a lot of damage on one of their most important units very quickly. Now, if the AI had any sense when it saw this happening, it should be pulling Skarbrand away right now, or at least trying to disrupt these missiles to stop this from happening. But alas, the AI is a little bit small brain at times. So you'll find that in campaign, this focus fire tactic works very well, as the AI can be a little bit silly and doesn't really get out the way of it. But in multiplayer, a human should be a bit smarter to either see this coming and not even go in there in the first place, or they'll try and disrupt those missiles harder, or if they do start getting focus fired, they would pull Skarbrand away out of range so that he's safe. So it only takes a few strong missile units to take down even the strongest of lords and enemies. If we had 4 or 5 missile units or artillery or whatever shooting at him, he probably wouldn't have lasted a minute. Now, of course, if you've got a lot of missile units, there's nothing stopping you from shooting at multiple targets, but still focus firing with a couple of units on each. Here I'm firing 2 units at these incoming Furies, and 2 units at the incoming Plague Drones, because flying units are especially dangerous to this build because I've got a lot of missile units that they could disrupt. So I want to get rid of them quickly before they cause me any problems. You can see they're doing it already, disrupting some of my missiles, so they were the priority to get rid of. Then we move on to the large targets, of which there are a lot of in the Nurgle army, but this is where focus firing can really shine as an anti-large tool, because there's really no way for large units to hide from it. They tower above infantry, so you don't have to worry about friendly fire or being obstructed, and most units won't be able to quickly run away from it, like infantry. If there's an anti-large spear unit chasing a Great Unclean One, he could just run away from them to avoid that damage. But missiles, he can't physically outrun the speed of the missiles. His only hope is to get out of range of them, but that then means he's out of combat probably. So that can make this tactic also a way to control large units and keep them out of certain areas by scaring them away with focus firing. And if they refuse to run away, well, you'll simply keep blasting them down until they're dead, and then you move on to the next one and the next one until you eliminate all the large stuff from the enemy army. This can be a very powerful way to go. Usually though, the trouble is making sure all your missile units can keep firing all of the time. But you get the idea of the strength of focus firing here. You can either nuke an enemy with damage so quickly that they start to waver or rout or disintegrate straight away, and large enemies are very often good, easy targets for this kind of tactic. The last thing to think about with this tactic though is the type of ammo you have and armor of the enemy. For example, Ogre Bulls here only have 30 armor, so they're a lightly armored unit. Iron Guts, however, have 90 armor, they're an armored unit. So focus firing here with my Kossars, who have non-armor piercing bows, their good target here is the Ogre Bulls because they can probably do more damage to them quickly and potentially rout them off as they have lower leadership. So in this case, we can simply be more effective against the Bulls than we can against the Iron Guts. Even though the Iron Guts are the more dangerous, powerful unit, you might want to shoot them first. Sometimes it's better to take out a bunch of weaker things rather than the one stronger thing, if that makes sense. Now you see, if we do the same thing again, but this time we focus the Iron Guts instead of the Bulls, you can see we do a little bit of damage to them before they arrive. That's all good, but we're not going to have any hope of routing them off or the Ogre Bulls. So it means that both of those units are going to be around fighting for longer. So at least when we shoot the Ogre Bulls, we can rout them off quickly and take them out of the game for a while. But now let's say instead of Kossars, we actually had Streltsy, who have armor-piercing missiles, which makes them way more powerful than Kossars. And because they have that armor-piercing damage, the armor of the Iron Guts is no issue, so we can simply focus the more dangerous unit first, because we'll be able to rout them very quickly. You can see we're doing lots of damage to them as they approach. We got them at about half health, and we're going to be able to rout them off and get them out of the fight very quickly. Much like we did to the Ogre Bulls with the Kossars. Only the Kossars weren't capable of doing this to the Iron Guts because they simply couldn't output the damage. So do try to pay attention to what ammo type you're using against what kind of target. It's not the end of the world if you use the wrong ammo type against the wrong target. Sometimes it can still be a good idea. It's really a situational thing, but for the most part, you can be more effective if you apply your ammo well. So if your boys are packing heat, make sure to use it well. Look for those focus fire opportunities and try to find the most effective means of getting enemy units off the battlefield, whether that's with death or routing. And remember that focus firing with missiles is often better anti-large than actual anti-large units. This, alongside hammer and anvil, is one of the most basic and most powerful tactics you can perform in Total War. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the future.